Recording, okay. Here we go. And we're recording. I'll give you the key.
Welcome to the Remembering Podcast, the podcast designed to help you remember who you are. We are based in Nashville, Tennessee, and I am Taylor.
I am KK.
And I am OnenO.
Today, we are going to be talking about the hero's journey. We'll probably talk a lot about Joseph Campbell. He's come up on previous podcasts, and we're big fans. And OnenO is pretty much going to take the lead on the front end because there's a lot of info here. And so we're going to kind of do like an overarching theme, and then we'll kind of dive in and dissect things along the way. So buckle up.
Yeah. Grab a coffee. We're going to go deep. So the hero's journey is something that is very important to me and came across my path specifically back in around 2011, 2012, when I started going through my awakening and started kind of thinking outside of the box of the church and just seeing what the rest of the world talks about when it comes to spiritual awakening and enlightenment. So Joseph Campbell, specifically the book, The Power of Myth, is a wonderful conversation between him and Bill Moyers. And they originally aired it as an 8-part television series on the PBS? PBS or BBC?
Super old.
Yeah, I can't remember.
Not super,
I think it was PBS. So if you want to find those
like
videos.
in the 80s.
Yeah. This was like right before he died. I think it actually came out 86 and then he passed in
now
87.
It's on Netflix.
Is it?
It is, yeah.
Yeah, it is. It's like 6 episodes. I think they're around an hour long each. And the graphics are super
yeah.
PBS in the 80s.
Oh, yeah.
But the content is just stellar.
Yeah.
A little dry if you're used
Sure.
to like watching the Avengers every day.
Well,
but
because it's just a conversation.
well,
It
yeah,
is,
it's a
yeah.
conversation. And I did it. I listened while I was painting. I did it.
You did it.
I worked my way through
You
while
did
I was
it.
painting my nails. And so I would watch an episode every week and like 2 weeks or whatever, give myself a manicure and listen to this amazing conversation. And so every time I think about that show, I think about painting my nails,
What
which
color?
was probably not the overall
What
intent.
color did you
Oh,
go
all
with?
kinds of colors.
Oh,
I think I was
the
into like
rainbow.
maroon at the
Yeah.
time, but
Nice.
Just to go down memory lane about how we watched The Power of Myth. When it came out on Netflix, I got super geeked out and excited. And it was actually July the 4th of 2018. I was at a cookout doing as all, Americans do on 4th of July. I could not wait to get out of there so I could get home and watch The Power of Myth. And I
hilarious.
seriously went home, didn't look at a firework that night. I was like, I'm so excited. This is what I'm doing. And I'll never forget. I think about The Power of Myth a lot now, every 4th of July
Oh, yeah.
for the last 2 years.
Well, that's good, about independence and freedom.
That's
I guess.
right.
Yeah. So
Wow, we really manifested each other because, the level of
we're
geek.
really cool.
I know.
It's a good thing we hang out together.
yeah. Between
We
that
leave
story
parties to go home and watch PBS miniseries.
and between
I
that
want your
story and
barbecue.
all of the music that we talked about last time, we got a cool thing going.
There's
guys.
a lot.
we do.
It's good.
So-
You can aspire to be like us, everyone.
So you can watch the special. I guess it's on Netflix, which is amazing. But it also came out as a book. And the book, just so people know, is the full transcript of their whole dialogue, whereas it was edited down for
Cool.
these specials.
Nice.
So the book gives you everything and more that you would see in the series. And so Joseph Campbell, it may be somewhat common knowledge to hear the term the hero's journey in today's culture, but Joseph Campbell actually invented that term. And he's the one so he was a cross-cultural anthropologist, which basically meant that he studied world mythology. And so he was the first person that basically realized there was one, what he called metamyth, the myth above all myths, and he termed it the hero's journey. And so he sees that throughout all cultures across the world, they all tell a very similar story within this one main myth. And then, of course, they may all have their own individual myths. So the hero's journey is basically the journey that all of us go on in multiple ways, multiple times throughout our lives. So there's like your whole life arc can be a hero's journey, but there can also be a hero's journey in you moving out of your parents' house and going to college. There can be a hero's journey in the start of a relationship or in the end of a relationship. So it's a myth that encompasses so many things. So to basically lay out the few main points of the hero's journey is the hero always starts in what's called the ordinary world. It's your regular life. And that is where we're introduced to the hero and we see what their regular life looks like. And then someday, somehow, the hero gets this call to adventure. And now Joseph describes how there's basically two types of archetypal heroes. There's the willing hero and the reluctant hero. And generally speaking, the reluctant hero is a comedy because you're watching this hero being forced into a hero position. You know, for some reason, like Shaun of the Dead is coming to my mind with like Simon Pegg, where, you know, it's just like a bunch of mishaps, but he ends up becoming this hero.
He would really rather not be involved.
Exactly. Yeah. He just wants to like stay at the pub and drink his beer and not deal with the zombies, right?
Yes.
So the reluctant hero or the willing hero, but both of them get the call. And if it's the willing hero, then he chooses to embark on his on this call, on this journey. He thinks it's for this one thing, but little does he know all of these things are about to take place. So the first action is the call, and then there's the crossing of the threshold. And that is the moment where the hero has officially begun this journey and this path outside of his ordinary world. And also the way that this crossing of the threshold is talked about is it's called crossing the threshold into the underground, because you're basically going into the extreme unknown. And so the hero that crosses the threshold, and he's then met by some sort of guardian of the threshold who also ends up giving him a gift. And this gift usually comes into play in his final trial, which we'll get to in a minute. So like in Lord of the Rings, the hobbits meet up with the elvish people. And forgive me, all of you Lord of the Rings fans, but the main like elvish demigod girl, woman, she ends up giving
Liv Tyler.
Not her, no. Actually,
the other one.
The other
Kate
one.
Blanchett?
Kate Blanchett. She ends up giving
Their real names.
Yeah, because we don't know. Yeah,
Arwen.
We're gonna butcher them if we can try.
Yeah.
But she gives all of them gifts. She gives Frodo this little vial of starlight that comes in handy at the very end of his hero's journey.
Wow. I want one of those.
Yeah, I know. So that's the
I brought
crossing.
you one today.
Oh, this is sweet of you.
A little star vial.
Yeah.
Nice. I want one too. So anyways, then the hero is now in the underground, otherwise known as the unknown, the underworld.
Also, there's a fabulous song at the beginning of Frozen 2, which is my favorite movie, called Into the Unknown.
Oh, nice.
And then Brendan Urie does an amazing cover of it, like the pop version, and it's stellar. And it's pretty much like encompasses this part of the hero's journey.
Yeah, the embarking and all of that.
Oh, yeah.
So then the hero's on the journey, and then comes all of these trials, which is basically, in like a cosmic view, preparing the hero for his ultimate trial. And so then the ultimate trial is, in old school mythology, typically mythologized as the confronting of a dragon, the slaying of a dragon. And we'll definitely unpack that symbolism. But essentially, the hero gets put through this wild trial, confronts the dragon, ends up slaying the dragon, and then receives a gift or a boon or like gold from the dragon. And as soon as the hero has that gold, the next phase is the flight. And now the hero is being chased and has to get out of there before he is officially consumed by all of the minions of the underworld.
I feel like I've seen this movie 700 times.
Because you have.
Or plus.
Yeah, it's
or,
because this is every hero's journey arc.
I can't wait to go into
Oh,
after
yeah.
you're done.
Yeah, there's so many movies to talk about. So then the hero is now being chased as he has this gold as this gift, and he's being chased back to the crossing of the threshold again. And once he crosses that threshold, he now is back in the ordinary world where the hero originally started. And the whole idea is that the only thing different in this ordinary world is now the hero. And so now the hero has this gold, this wisdom and knowledge, and he's able to share it with the ordinary world. And then technically, the hero's journey can start again at any moment in time. So you can get another call to adventure and another crossing of the threshold, another dragon, another gift, and then another reintegration into the world. And it kind of follows some of that stuff we were talking about in one of our first podcasts of the idea of death and rebirth, this constant death and rebirth cycle.
Yeah, because you literally are dying to your old self. And when you go back through that threshold, you are reborn as a new creation. You're not who you used to be.
Totally. So to finish it, I want to just help the listeners out there visualize it as like a circle. So the ordinary world would be the 12 o'clock position, straight up and down if you're imagining a clock. That's the ordinary world, the beginning. The call to adventure is like maybe 1 o'clock. As soon as you get to 3 o'clock, that's the crossing of the threshold. So imagine this circle has a horizontal line. And again, if it was a clock, that line would be cutting between 3 and 9. So once you get to 3, that's the crossing of the threshold. Then comes all of these trials. You eventually get down to the 6 o'clock position, which is the final confrontation with the dragon and the receiving of the gold. And then the chase takes you back up. The next crossing of the threshold will be at 9 o'clock. And then you're back in the ordinary world and you're reintegrating as the clock comes all the way back up to 12. So that's like the basic hero's journey.
That was great.
Thank you.
Yeah. I was wondering how you were going to do that. So
Interesting.
quick.
I've been studying it for years.
Yeah.
I would have thought that the dragon battle, where, like going up against the final boss, is later on, maybe at like 80% of the way through the plot line.
Well,
So that's interesting that you put it at 6 o'clock.
yeah, the reason why I think that would be is because typically in movies or in narratives, we delay, if you think about an hour and a half long movie, we delay the 6 o'clock position of this clock to the third act. So the first act is like the ordinary world, the call to adventure. The second act is usually when they finally cross the threshold. And then the third act is the final confrontation and the return to the regular world.
Yeah.
So oftentimes in movies, you have the 6 o'clock position happening towards the end of the film. And then you have the 9 o'clock position, the re-entering the world in the last 5 minutes of the film.
Right.
And then the last 5 minutes are the reintegration into the ordinary world while the hero is now changed.
Yeah.
So they kind of spread
Well,
it
it
out.
builds suspense that way.
It does.
And also, once they beat the final boss, no one cares what happens to
Right,
them.
yeah,
In the
exactly.
movie, at least. Where
Yeah.
in our real life, there's more like coping and recalibrating to do.
Totally.
Yeah.
You're making me think of the movie Black Panther. Did either
I
of you
didn't
see that
see
movie?
that.
It's so freaking good.
I hear it's phenomenal.
It's absolutely amazing. But this last moment that we're talking about is pretty clear in this film. There's all of this battle and everything, and then they finally finish it. And then the return to the ordinary world is like one scene at the very end where they're now back standing in Oakland as they've decided to open up their Wakanda society in Oakland. And that's their integrating into the world. And it's their mission to help people.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah, spoiler. It doesn't really spoil things, but
It's been out a while. So it's your fault for not seeing it
yeah,
yet.
plus, do we have any Marvel watchers in our audience? I'm not sure. Not sure.
I'm going to say it was like 2002, 2003. This is when like the first Lord of the Rings came out.
Yeah.
And I've never been so captivated by a movie in my entire life. Like I was just like, I didn't read the books. Don't stone me. But like I was 18, it was like, I was really excited to like start. I mean, I would literally wait till the next November until the next Lord of the Rings would come out. And like, this was like a yearly thing for me.
Not do anything in the meantime. Except just sit and wait for Lord of
Come
the
on,
Rings.
Peter Jackson.
But I was just like, why am I so captivated? At 18, 19, 20 years old, why am I so captivated by this storyline? And I wouldn't say I was like a super big fantasy nerd at that time. I was captivated by stars and stuff like that, but never really like Lord of the Rings type things.
Yeah.
And I think the reason why I was so captivated by it is because I really was interested growing up about the death and rebirth phase that the Bible talks about so many times by so many people.
Totally.
And so, I guess it was a few years later that the dragon got incorporated into it. And then I love psychology, obviously. And so I started, there's a guy named Jordan Peterson out there that
Love him.
is very modern day. And he started speaking about the hero's journey quite a bit. And I was like, what is this hero's journey? And then that threw me into Joseph Campbell land.
Oh, yeah.
So I actually went kind of backwards into Joseph Campbell, I would say. But it's the hero's journey is something that I think every single person can relate to when you say,
Totally.
what's your story? That's what, like when we say, like, what's your story? What have you been through?
Yep.
We are saying to each other, we're sharing our hero's journey with one another.
We are.
Yeah.
That's why this is the myth, the meta myth that everybody tells, because we all connect with it on a very deep level. And I guess if we're really going to dive into Joseph Campbell and his teaching and world discovery of the hero's journey, it became popularized in film through Star Wars. And Joseph Campbell worked directly with George Lucas to help write the myth of the hero's journey into the fabric of Luke Skywalker.
And they talk about that in that documentary.
It's amazing.
Quite a bit. Yeah.
It's so phenomenal.
Yeah, so if we do have any Star Wars nerd fans out there, much like myself, you're going to love hearing Joseph Campbell talk about this stuff. And another little fun anecdote is they filmed this at Skywalker Ranch. So the whole PBS interview with Joe Campbell.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so fun.
It's actually filmed at Skywalker Ranch. So that's kind of cool.
That is neat.
So I remember in college, I took a world religions class. I had to have so many cultural credits, and I was like, sure. And my biggest takeaway from that class was the story of the Messiah and going through the trials and tribulations, and then dying to the old self and coming back to offer salvation to everyone. And seeing that story, I was like, I saw this story in Spider-Man. I see this story over and over and over again. And each world religion that I learned about, like you said, has a very similar myth running through it.
Yeah.
And I had this paradox in my mind of, is everyone inspired by the Messiah story of Jesus? And they're just telling that story over and over, like that was the first one? Or is this just the way, more like cosmic Christ level, zoom out? This is just the way our souls work. This is just the way we have character development. This is just the way everything works. And the story of Jesus happens to fall into that line as well.
Yeah.
That it threw me for a loop because until that point I had held that as the end all be all, and I was like, wait.
Yeah.
How come this is other places?
So the call to action takes place.
Yes.
And we're kind of like, my favorite association of that is going back to the Matrix. And when Neo calls him and says, there's only two ways out of the building, you can either go down this stairwell down the side of the building, or they're going to take you out of here in custody.
Yeah, he had to jump onto the window washer scaffolding thing on the 40th story. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Wasn't it the first time they took him out? No. They eventually...
He tried to do it and he gave up.
And then they take him and they put him in the car. So it was the hero failed. But the call's still there, so he's going to get...
Follow the white rabbit.
Exactly.
Right. The call. Yeah.
Yep.
So anyway, all that to say is then we get to that, the threshold.
Yeah.
And so at that threshold, I love this aspect of the hero's journey. If we want to think about it in neuroscience, they call it critical response. I'm pretty sure I just said that correctly. Your brain is your subconscious mind is starting to entertain these thoughts, or you're starting to entertain these thoughts and these ideas, and you're like, whoa, this kind of goes against the whole entire paradigm of the lifestyle I've built. And this can be anything, the way you look at life, the way it functions, politics, religion, the way your family operates, the way you operate. And so what happens is our brains want to protect us. And so it doesn't matter if it knows it's right or wrong, it's going to start defending against the current narrative that exists in your brain.
Yeah.
And say, nope, what you're thinking is wrong. Do not go past that threshold. Don't do it because you're being dangerous and you're putting us at danger by the way you're thinking and, yada, yada, yada. But we have to override. That's part of being a hero is overriding that critical response mechanism because it's just it's like the amygdala, like the fight or flight or fear. Like we have to sit within ourselves and say, what am I actually going through right now?
100%.
Yeah. So I love that aspect of like how our brains work in response to this really spiritual call to life.
Yes. And you're laying out something else that really needs to be discussed. The hero's journey is an internal journey. So the dragon that you face is your own. The demon at the threshold of the underground is your own. That's what you're talking about. The gargoyle that says, don't go here, that's in you.
The gatekeeper.
The gatekeeper. The gatekeeper of the crossing of that threshold. So, and immediately on that point, right?
Yeah.
I know.
Like right before the glass ceiling shatters, you have to decide, I actually want it to shatter.
It's true. Yeah. And you have to get over your own internal demon that will try to keep you from there.
Yeah.
So because we're talking about this exact moment of the dragon, I posted this on my Instagram. In case people out there don't know, my Instagram is I am OnenO. But this is a little Joseph Campbell clip that I'll play for you guys really quick about the dragon.
Yeah.
So let's hear this. Let me start it with nice volume. One more time.
The real dragon is in you.
And what is that real dragon?
That's your ego holding you in.
What's my ego?
What I want, what I believe, what I can do, what I think I love, and all that. What I regard as the aim of my life and so forth. It might be too small. It might be that which pins you down. And if it's simply that of doing what the environment tells you to do, it certainly is pinning you down. And so the environment is your dragon as it reflects within yourself. The real dragon is in you.
Yeah.
That's great.
So great. I mean, I could listen to that guy talk
from
for
the man
days.
himself.
I know.
Yeah.
Thank you, Joe.
Any more thoughts around all that? Because that's a really big part of this. Because I want to go to Dragonland, but I think this critical response and the threshold is super
I
important.
have a thought about the call to adventure.
Okay, let's go back there.
So
Yeah, we're going to jump all over. I
yeah,
think. This is gonna be
so
great.
maybe we'll go chronologically, but also we can
But
jump
maybe
around.
not.
Yeah,
There
we'll
are
jump
no
around.
rules.
That's my little Virgo side coming out. There is an order here.
Yeah, totally.
So Alexander Shaya, who I discovered on Rob Bell's podcast called The Robcast, he does an interview. I think they've done 3 or 4 now every December, and it's kind of about like the Advent season. I've learned so much from him, but he has a book, something about the heart and the mind. But he has done also the big pilgrimage in Spain, like ton of times. He leads people on this pilgrimage. But his book is about the hero's journey because he was a pupil of Joseph Campbell.
Amazing.
And he looks at the 4 books of the gospel, Matthew, Mark, John, and Luke. He flips them. And then he says that when you look at it from that filter, it shows the exact hero's journey as told in the beginning of the New Testament.
What?
It blew my mind.
That's
Did you do it?
amazing.
Yeah, have you read them like that?
Well, I heard him talking about it on Pete Holmes' podcast.
Okay.
So when the Alexander Shaya episode of You Made It Weird is fantastic. Pete Holmes' podcast called You Made It Weird. And he lays it out in that it's long. It's 2.5 hour podcast because those are long format. It's amazing. But one of the things he says about the call to adventure is it doesn't necessarily have to be this mysterious, there's more out there for you.
Right. No.
He says it could just be an unavoidable change.
Exactly.
And that would be more of the resistant hero. Like an unavoidable change happens and it pushes you towards the threshold, whether you wanted it to or not.
Yeah.
And that really changed my perspective on it.
Yeah, exactly. Perfect example in real life stuff is like your girlfriend breaks up with you. Can't change that. Here comes the call to adventure. Or you lose your job.
You're like, no,
You
I don't
can't
want that
change
adventure.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, think about how many people just this year in 2020 got called to the adventure that they didn't really realize they were about to get.
Yeah.
And then some people refuse to cross the threshold to that adventure, but it also gives you the opportunity to.
And then you hear people saying this has been one of the most amazing transformative years of their life.
Totally.
They probably, crossed the threshold.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's reframing what is presented to you as well. Like you can continue to resist like, okay, I lost my job. And then you can fall into like, I'm a victim. This is not something that's ever going to be good for me. And you have to kind of look at life always when something shitty happens to you. Like, okay, I am on an adventure. This is a journey. And you're always going to be on a journey.
Totally.
So like, what are we going to learn? And like, what is around the corner? And there's always something around the corner.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people are being confronted with asking certain questions that reside at this crossing of the threshold of, do I love my job? I may be upset that I lost my job, but how much was I emotionally invested in that? Or was there this thing that I always imagined doing with my life that I just put off into the background for years and years and years? And of course, it's not always that, sunshine and rainbows in 2020. Like, this is real life shit.
Trials don't feel like sunshine and rainbows.
But that's the thing. The call to adventure oftentimes is trying to wake you up to something that is wanting to come from this deeper part of you that you have been blocking for one reason or the other, which is why actually it usually comes through chaos.
That reminds me too of like, no one has said this to me. This is me talking. Like when I was a child. Sorry, everyone.
Thank you for clarifying.
I'm having a conversation with myself right now.
It's fun to listen to.
Yeah, I love
it. I'm here for it.
I was young, I used to question myself as like, how do I know I have a spirit? And how do I know that there's something else inside of me that's not just this physical body? And it's what you were saying right there is like, there are these deep desires rooted within myself that I don't consciously like place there. They're just there. And I don't know when they're actually going to come out of me. But I know that they will because they have to.
Totally.
But it's like, that is how I know there's like the egoic side, which he was talking about. That's like, oh no, you have to stay on this one path because this is what the world around you expects from you.
Right.
And if you stay on this path, you'll have a really great 401k and you will have security
Safety.
and health insurance.
Stock option.
Yeah, exactly.
Portfolio.
And people will think, you're really responsible. And then there's this other side of me that's like, I have one life, and like, not to be reckless or say, be a reckless human being, but at the same time, like, there's got to be something inside of us that has this like, why are you putting yourself in this cage? And life can be adventurous, but it's also going to be, anything worth having is going to be difficult to get.
Yeah.
Like one of my favorite sayings in grad school was like, because grad school was a bitch, but it was like, if this was easy, everyone would do it, So it's like, and I think that I honor people who've gone through the hero's journey because it is not an easy task.
Yeah, the trials are incredibly real and personal.
Yeah.
And that's why we connect with the myth, because, it's like a category that we all see ourselves in. But when the hero's journey takes place in your life, it'll be the demons within you, which I'm only using that word because we do have fear associated with that word. We confront our fears.
I like the word demon. I think
Explain
the image,
why, so that's not just a weird soundbite.
I think the image of like a demon is just like, okay, whoa. It's very like
vivid.
It's vivid. And I think that,
It grabs your attention.
It does. And it's like, whoa, these are aspects of myself I want nothing to do with or resemble at all.
Yeah, they embody fear perfectly.
Right.
Yeah.
I also, this might be way late in the conversation to get clarity on this, but the word myth.
Oh yeah, let's get clarity on that.
So myth,
because Joe talks about
a
that.
lot of times you hear the word myth and you think a tall tale or something that's not true.
Yeah.
Like, let's confront the myths about this. Let's confront the untruths about this situation. Where
Let's
Joseph
demystify.
Campbell, he says a myth is something that conveys something that is so true, it can only be told in a story.
Right.
Or a myth is something where when you recognize the truth hidden in the story, you have an audible,
Oh, yep.
like there's a little bit of
it.
like a,
Yeah. Aha.
there's like it moves something in you.
Yeah. Joe also talks about it as being the story beyond the story.
Yeah.
So it's the real story that's being told, but it's embedded inside the story that's being told.
Which is why you can tell a story about a guy living on another planet talking to tiny green furry aliens and everybody relates to it. Like everybody relates to the Star Wars story of I'm being challenged.
talking about Star
We're
Wars.
talking
Oh,
about
like,
Star
what-
Wars. We're
Are
talking
we back
about
in
Luke
60s
Skywalker.
UFO land?
Yeah. We're talking about Luke Skywalker in a completely unfamiliar environment
You
with
just pissed off
creatures.
so many Star Wars
With
fans, by the way.
creatures, I love Yoda.
Oh, but okay. You're talking about Yoda?
Tiny green,
Okay.
big ears.
I got it now. I got it.
Yes.
I see where you were
Trust
going.
yourself. You must. Whatever. So, but the truth of that story is so much truer than the surface level of the story.
100%.
All that to say, we all relate to Luke Skywalker.
We do. Can I unpack myth
yeah,
a little
yeah,
bit
yeah,
longer?
yeah,
So Joe makes it very clear that in today's culture, and I guess this was even present in the 70s and 80s, and when he was saying this, we associate the word myth with lie. You said something untrue, that's a myth. Well, he says that is the biggest disservice to the field of mythology ever, because these are not lies. And then when Bill Moyers questions him further on, well, you're speaking in metaphor, he talks very clearly about the difference between a metaphor and an analogy. I think it's an analogy or a simile, a metaphor versus a simile. So a metaphor is when you say she had a smile like the sunshine. When you say the word like, you're not speaking in metaphor. Or I'm sorry, you are speaking in metaphor.
Yeah.
Wait, no. I think I'm getting them backwards because
Oh, no.
we get them backwards culturally. But what he's trying to say is, I think he says that metaphor is when you say her smile is the sunshine.
Yeah.
Or, her face beams sunshine. You're not saying like a sunshine. That's a simile.
Yes.
A metaphor, a pure metaphor is, I think he gives the example of running like a deer, or that person was a deer. So that person ran fast like a deer. That's a simile. A metaphor is when you paint that picture actually as a deer, and you say that, John, who was running this fast, John was a deer.
Yeah.
John Deere. Why did I just go there? I wanted to make those two things
There's
clear.
that deeper poetic symbolism there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also it helps us understand the landscape of how to interpret mythology. In the Matrix, they show Neo in the Matrix world, the virtual world, and that is a metaphor. They don't say it's like a virtual world. They show it as a literal metaphor.
Yeah.
So I'm going to pull a Jamie fact-checking moment right
Yeah.
here. Similes use words like or
Yes. And
as
like.
to compare things. Life is like a box of chocolates. In
Yes.
contrast, metaphors directly state a comparison, such as love is a battlefield. So yes.
Yeah, there you go.
There you go.
Perfect.
Just for everyone listening out
is
there,
a
is like,
battlefield. What
love
a
is a
wonderful
battlefield.
example.
Yeah, so that's why
Thanks, Google.
these myths aren't actually lies then, because they're meant to say, like when you say love is a battlefield or something like that.
People aren't like, that's a lie.
Yeah, you're not literally and you're also not literally envisioning World War II happening or things like that.
right.
But it does convey an emotion. It conveys a truth. And that's really the point of metaphor, is that other thing it's trying to talk about inside the story.
I was going to say something earlier and I forgot.
That's all right.
Back around.
I had another thought about the Matrix.
I could
guys
talk
are-
about the Matrix all day.
Me too.
Please go for it.
Matrix and Star Wars. Those are like my two.
two of my favorites.
So at the very, a little bit ago, you were talking about something that led me to think of Neo's final speech. And I think it was when we were talking about the coming back to the ordinary world. The Neo's speech at the very end of Matrix sets up this moment perfectly, where you see that the hero has completely changed and he is now reintegrated into the ordinary world and is essentially just offering his wisdom at that point. He can't change the ordinary world, but he can now live as a changed example in the ordinary world. So that his final speech from the very end of The Matrix, number 1, he says, I know you're out there. I can feel you now. I know that you're afraid. You're afraid of us. You're afraid of change. I don't know the future. I didn't come here to tell you how this is going to end. I came here to tell you how it's going to begin. I'm going to hang up this phone, and then I'm going to show these people what you don't want them to see. I'm going to show them a world without you, a world without rules and controls, without borders and boundaries, a world where anything is possible. Where we go from here is a choice I leave to you.
So pumped up right now.
Right? I know. I just hear Rage Against the Machine in my head.
Oh my gosh. And he's about to like jump off the rooftop. And
He,
there's
like,
all like the
flies
ones
in
and
the distance.
zeros
It's
like
so
falling in
great.
the
Come
background.
out 98?
99.
99. Like
So
what
good.
a like it's very prophetic.
Oh, yeah.
And I do want to kind of like I want us to continue talking about that, but I do want us to touch base on like the how prophetic The Matrix was, and also Avatar. So we'll
Yeah.
get to that in a minute.
Love Avatar.
I think that's kind of the fascinating thing about the hero's journey is it's applicable at all moments in time, which is why when you make a movie like Star Wars or The Matrix or Lord of the Rings or Avatar,
Harry Potter.
yeah, well, I don't,
Yeah,
I'm going to put it in there. I haven't
yes.
seen it enough.
Oh my
I'm
gosh.
sorry, Harry Potter
Yes.
fans.
Yes.
I haven't seen it enough. So
Oh, no.
you guys got it. You guys handle that
Yeah.
one. I'll handle Star
Trust
Wars.
us.
But that's why they become these movies that are huge at the box office. They end up on our DVD shelves, if we still have those, for years and years and years. We watch them over and over because we get new insights into them every time we watch them.
Yeah.
I've seen The Matrix probably 15, 20 times at this point.
It's a living story, and we're at a different place in our own journey every time we see it. And so that part of it always speaks to us differently.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's true.
Avatar's
true.
like that for me. I watch it every year.
Do you?
Every year. And I
Nice.
just am like, oh, okay. He went on the journey as a volunteer, and that's part of like you either go voluntarily or, kicking and
It was
screaming.
supposed to be his
Yeah.
brother's spot.
Right.
And then
yeah.
he got thrown into it because he had the same DNA as his brother. He wasn't even, so he was a little bit unwilling.
That's true.
And that's a
yeah.
tragic call to adventure.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go too far, but Disney always has their crazy call to adventure as trauma with a parent dying. And that's like a whole nother subject,
Like
but I wanted to
early
say
Disney.
it. That is early. Yeah, Bambi, all about
Bambi,
parent
the good
dying.
dinosaur. I was not
Right.
expecting that.
Yeah, there's oftentimes
Lion King.
Yeah.
There's oftentimes the death of a father figure or the death of a mother figure, but the death of a father figure is very much Joseph Campbell hero's journey symbology. But I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole just yet.
I do want to talk. So when he does talk about myth, I think that we have lost the art of storytelling in today's culture. And that is what he was trying to do with, here's all of these ancient myths from all different types of societies and cultures from all over the world. And look how they fit together and how we can use them in our own personal journeys, our own personal lives and experiences. And today I feel like storytelling is no longer really, it's not a thing anymore. It's we look at stories or, what is real, what is not real. And that's, I love parables. And there's parables that transcend not just, we always think of Jesus spoke in parables. Yeah, he did. And he did it for a specific reason. But parables were taught in all different types of cultures and civilizations.
Zen parables are some of my favorites.
Yeah, I love, yeah.
Well, especially with something spiritual because it's surpasses the third dimension. It's something that it's so abstract, we can't hold it in our hands really, a lot of the concepts. So to say, well, it's like when you plant a seed in the ground
Right.
and the roots get stuck on the rocks.
100%.
Oh, okay.
So when Jesus was teaching these parables, I know it was in like Matthew, Mark, Luke, or John, not sure what the verse is, but he says, let thine eye be single. And I really think that was him saying like, have a point of reference that's interpreting this, these stories or this knowledge that I'm giving to you, not from your senses, but from something else, something internal inside of you.
Yeah, the deeper wisdom.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then the other part of that verse is he says, then your body will be revealed to be light. Yeah.
He sure does.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so speaking on parables, because I love this idea, and I do this very naturally. I don't know, maybe it's because I grew up in the church or it just comes from my soul, but I make up analogies and metaphors all the time to be able to explain myself, because I find English to be very hard to communicate through.
Speaking is hard.
Speaking is hard.
What are words?
Yes, good thing we're doing
Words
a
are hard.
podcast. But yeah, metaphors are the best way to convey knowledge that is really hard to just communicate outright. And so that gives you a deeper understanding of some of the Jesus stories and some of the biblical stories when you understand that a lot of their metaphors are coming through agriculture. So they talk about plants, they talk about the garden, they talk about these things because that was incredibly relevant to the mental state of that time where humanity was. They knew what it was like to have a garden or to try to, work with plants. And so when you're then trying to describe the idea of spiritual awakening, how do you explain that? And Jesus is trying to explain it through certain analogies with plants all the time. And how do you help other people with their spiritual awakening? Well, he speaks in parables along plants. And like you just said, you plant the seed and you don't plant it in the non-fertile soil. You don't plant it where there's weeds on the ground or rocks on the ground. You plant it in a place where you see the soil is ready for it. That's huge to me on my journey as I've been trying to share my spiritual awakening with people. If I recognize in them that their inner state is just weeds or just rocks, then I'm wasting my time even trying to find that connection with them. So you can only plant your seeds in the fertile soil. And then the next amazing part is that nature itself grows that plant, not your ego, not your willpower, but the universe is designed to grow those seeds into fruition. And then the end of that hero's journey parable is that then the fruits come. And now you're blessed in your ordinary world once again. And then the cycle continues next year. You plant the seeds. And so it's like both literal in the sense that this is how the world of plants works, but it's also metaphoric in the sense of this is how your consciousness works. And this is how soul growth works. So I love those parables.
Oh, yeah.
So good. Another major point I'm just throwing things out.
Yes.
One of my favorite Joseph Campbell quotes of all time is Bill Moyers is talking about, well, what happens if you're on the hero's journey and the path dries up? You can't find the path anymore, or there's a block that seems that you can't get around. Joseph says that when you're really on your hero's path, the universe will provide doors where there were once walls. And I love that.
Ooh,
and the way I imagine it is like very Alice in Wonderland, where you might be looking at a door and then you like turn to talk to your guide and you're like, I don't see anything. And then they force you into learning a life lesson. And then they just say like, all right, now that you got it, just turn around one more time. And you face the wall again. And now there's a door. Or maybe the door there was like a wall with a bookshelf all along. You just didn't know that you had to pull this one book and it was a secret doorway that would open. But you get the knowledge and you learn the lesson of that moment, and then your journey continues.
Yeah, solve the little puzzle along the way, answer the troll's riddle, and then you get the insight to continue.
Exactly.
There's always something.
Yeah. But that the universe is always going to be providing you your path. And if you're stuck, it's generally because there's some sort of internal lesson that the universe is asking you to look at immediately.
So I love that you brought up Joseph Campbell quotes because
you got them. You got more?
I love quotes. Long ago when I was like discovering who he was, I was really drawn to his quotes at first.
Yeah.
And then I started really diving deep into like, oh, what's he teach? I just want to share like some quotes that really, they just started changing perspective of life in general for me.
Yeah.
The first one was, we must be willing to get rid of the life we've planned so to have the life that is waiting for us.
Perfect.
The other one is, the privilege of a lifetime is being who you are.
Ooh.
Okay, and your sacred space is where you can find yourself again and again. And I know we talk about creating like a prayer room or a space where you can talk to God or spirit, and like that sacred space is within you.
Yeah, it is.
It's not something outside of you.
Yeah, and my favorite Jesus quote is, "The kingdom of heaven is within you." The kingdom of heaven is, he also says, the kingdom of heaven is spread across the face of the earth and men don't see it.
Oh, I do think that there's something. Okay, so we do have senses, and visually, I like to look at pretty things. Yeah. So there is something also within me that, okay, if like you were saying earlier, like my inside must be like fertile for like a deeper spiritual practice to come out of that, and like don't cast your pearls to the swine, you know,
Right.
like where I'm supposed to be and what I'm supposed to be doing. But I think also outwardly, like I know that my environment affects me tremendously.
100%, totally.
So like when I see an icon or like I love putting statues or things that remind me of the spirit realm around me all the time. And that is something that I thought was a little silly, you know, like in the Old Testament, like don't have idols, blah, blah, blah. But like even coming in here and seeing all of your photographs and, you know, it just like, it creates such a beautiful space. And I think that is a reflection of like what's going on inside of you.
Well, and that's the
is.
difference. We can worship the statue and think the statue is the universe, but no, the statue is pointing back at the moon, right? The religion is the finger pointing at the moon.
It is.
Yeah.
It's not the moon. The moon is the thing. And so the statue is just the finger pointing back at the moon. It's just reminding you of what you value and what's important.
So I had this inner discovery when I started getting into yoga and exploring after going deep down Joseph Campbell rabbit holes and seeing how, the Christians that I grew up with were much more fearful than someone like Joseph Campbell, who sees these beautiful connections between societies. The Christians would just always say the statue of Buddha is an idol and it's idol worship. If you have it, it's real black and white to them. You're going to hell if you have it in your house, all that kind of stuff. So, and I used to actually have a fear about that because the church gave me that fear. But then came the day where I had this new understanding of it, where Carl Jung talks about we have these inner archetypes. He also talks very much about the subconscious mind and how we can communicate with the subconscious mind. And also, I'm just going to throw this one book out there called The Power of Your Subconscious Mind by Joseph Murphy. We could do another episode on that one. That's like another
I need to read it
deep
first.
dive. Let's read that because that book is amazing.
Book club.
Yep. It's called The Power of Myth, Joseph Murphy. Check it out.
Power of your subconscious mind.
The
Yeah.
Power of Your Subconscious Mind. Thank you. Power of Myth was Joseph Campbell, and the other one was Joseph Murphy.
Too many Josephs,
Yeah, I
too much
know.
power.
Joe's, man. And my yoga teacher was Joe. There's so many
man.
Joes in my life. So we interact with our subconscious. We can interact and prime our subconscious to pull forward certain aspects of ourselves. So what I found with the statue of Buddha was after practicing yoga for a while, getting into my meditation practice, I love the feeling that I have when I'm in meditation. Especially at that time, it was such a huge relief to the depression I was feeling, and it just delivered such an amazing sense of peace. And one day I was leaving yoga practice and I'm in their little reception studio area, and I see this wooden Buddha statue that they have for sale, and it's a little small guy that I could put on my bookshelf. And all of a sudden I felt called to get it. And what came forth in me is that you could have that in your environment to be priming your subconscious to think about what it feels like to be in the position that this Buddha statue is in. And then the same idea came through with the idea of incense. I would light incense and then I would sit and meditate. So then I got the idea later in the day, light incense again, and now it's priming my subconscious to recall that state. So that's how I see these symbols playing out in the real world, as they call forth that state from within you. It's not about worshiping them. Right. It's that they do have an impact on you, like you're talking about. So your environment has an impact in your inner landscape.
I have a little Buddha man in my bedroom, and when I look at him, I don't see, I must kneel down before him. I don't do that. But what I do see is this very peaceful creature, and this man who's embodied a life of peace. And that's all I get out of it. And, I could replace it with some, something that I buy from Restoration Hardware that's just like a decorative piece on,
Or from Family Christian Bookstores. It could be a dove.
it could be anything, but
Right,
like,
Yeah.
why, for me, I feel like, buy things that not only like, no one can see this, but Taylor has these beautiful crystal balls in her window that when the sun comes through, they reflect that looks like a rainbow.
Yeah, they
It's like
cast
a
rainbows
prism
all
thing.
around the room.
And like, I just think that's so cool
Make me
because like
so happy.
you walk in and you're
Yeah.
like, what? I just like literally transported into like a magical fairyland. And it's because you have these crystals in your window and you've just captured light.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And I feel like the antagonistic mind, our own inner Satan, because
Yeah.
that is a symbol in Christian mythology, is that we have Satan and Jesus within us. The inner Satan within us wants to say that stuff is bullshit.
Yeah.
You're just projecting rainbows. How fucking childish of you.
Right.
But that's
Be a grown up.
Yeah, that's
Inner
the
child loves it.
That's the point. That we have this inner antagonist, but we also, if you get past that, what is beyond that is that if it just makes you smile, if it just makes you feel positive and feel some sense of joy, why not bring that into your life?
Absolutely.
Why not pump your environment full of that
Yeah.
stuff? We do plenty of the opposite. We watch
We
all
sure
of this
do.
negative news. We watch all of these crazy apocalyptic movies. Why don't we have movies that show this type of uplifting and this? It's like we were talking about with music last time, where there's all of this music out there to lower your vibration. And there is music out there to raise your vibration, but pop culture says that's for sissies and it's bullshit.
So speaking of pumping great vibes into our environment, I'm going to shift gears because I would love to talk about the dragon.
Yes.
Oh my God, how have we not talked about the dragon
Well,
yet?
I feel like
You're
we've been
so
leading
good.
to the dragon. It's
Yes,
the
we have.
climax,
Yeah,
right?
and we just touched on Satan. It's a very similar
Yeah.
symbol for
And I
this
think
dragon.
environment too can, yes.
Yep. Yeah,
There we
it's
go.
there. Okay, so the dragon, it is the reason that old school mythology in all cultures talked about the dragon, according to Joseph Campbell, is that it is the ultimate symbol for that intense, ferocious beast that you cannot control. It's the impossible battle, the impossible enemy. There's basically no way you could imagine yourself slaying a dragon. That's the point of that symbol. It's so incredibly fear-invoking. And then to back up to the crossing of the threshold, when the guardian of the threshold gives the hero a gift, usually it's that exact gift that ends up killing the dragon, the hero's use of that gift. And then when the dragon is finally slayed, the gold is revealed. And I think we understand that symbol so far. But the dragon in your life, as we heard Joseph talking about, is an internal dragon. So when people look back on mythology and they take it literally and they think, oh, so, Ancient Alien says that there was dragons back in the time of the pyramids and they probably used them to lift these heavy stones to make, it's like, no, just because they wrote a dragon on a wall, I know the Egyptians didn't, but just because people have dragons in their mythology, it doesn't mean they're talking about dinosaurs or literal dragons. They're talking about this inner part of us that is almost impossible to defeat. And if you've ever experienced depression, you know how impossible that inner enemy can be. And it is real because it is actually you twisted into the most dark version that you could imagine, or in some cases, beyond your imagination that you would ever think possible for your inner landscape. But the other beautiful insight the hero's journey teaches us over and over and over every time we watch it is that dragon is defeatable. But you have to have a few elements in you, I think, in order to defeat this dragon. You have to have belief that you can. You have to have faith. Maybe those are the same things. And then you have to take action. You have to face it. You have to drop fear. You have to confront it, which maybe you should say with courage, because courage only comes out of fear. You have fear and you choose to step forward anyways. And that is what makes a hero courageous. And The other thing that Joseph makes very clear is that it is possible to die at the feet of this dragon. It's not guaranteed life if you just confront this dragon. And that's a really weird element to throw into this narrative right now, but it is important to recognize that this is a real battle with your own inner demon, with your own inner dragon. And people do lose it. People confront it. They get too scared. They get too terrified, and they go back on the hero's journey. And you meet those people in the world all the time. They're bitter people. They have victim complexes. They project narcissism and negativity into their environment because maybe at some point they went up against their dragon reluctantly, didn't face it with courage, and then now this dragon is ruling them.
Succumb to the fear of it
Yeah.
instead of the courage of it.
Yeah.
Courage, which literally means from the heart.
Yeah.
Core.
Yeah.
Core is the word for
awesome.
heart.
Yeah. So the dragon is real, and it's a real part of you that you must confront. And the hero is the one that confronts the dragon with courage. And the hero's journey lays out that when you confront the dragon head on and you come in with the lessons that you've learned after crossing the threshold, you've been given these gifts and you've gone through these trials. All of those trials were preparing you actually to face this dragon.
Yeah.
So, and you're also not in this battle alone. You may be the only hero in that moment holding the sword facing the dragon head on, but Joseph Campbell makes it clear thousands of heroes have gone through this battle before you. And the energy of the knowledge that we are not in that battle alone, empirically alone, is so encouraging to the hero. So if you face your dragon and you come in with these gifts and these lessons that you've been learning on the hero's journey, you can succeed and you can beat this inner dragon. And then the promise is that the gold is on the other side of that.
I just want to kind of touch on the gold.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, sure.
So,
And then I want to touch on the dying.
okay, cool.
Yeah.
That's to look forward to.
Oh,
So
yeah.
this was when I learned this from Joseph Campbell. So the idea of like the dragon always has gold, and like why does he care to have gold? And he's always protecting. So for those Lord of the Rings, okay, go to the Hobbit movie.
yeah.
He's Frodo has to go confront.
It's actually
Benedict
Bilbo.
Cumberbatch.
Yeah, well,
In the Hobbit,
is
it's Bilbo,
Bilbo.
who has to confront
Bilbo.
Smog, who you're
Yes,
talking
yes,
about.
who's
yes,
voiced
yes.
by Benedict Cumberbatch.
Is he
And
really?
it's phenomenal. And I was watching a late night show where they had Benedict Cumberbatch do the voice of the dragon just sitting on the couch, and it was startling. It was like so crazy.
He's such a good actor.
He's amazing.
Yeah, he's great. So Joseph Campbell basically says, look, the reason why the dragon and myth is always hoarding, he always hoards gold and he hoards virgins, typically. And these are because usually he's hoarding them from the village that he's suppressing or that he is tormenting. And it's because the village could really use the gold
Really
and
some virgins.
the virgins.
Stealing
Maybe
babies.
their town is dying. I don't know. They need to repopulate. But the idea of the dragon hoarding, so what that video you just showed was like, what is the dragon? Well, the dragon's within you. And well, what is it? What's it represent? Well, it represents the ego. So if our ego is wanting to hoard gold and virgins, it's basically things that a dragon can't do anything with either one of those.
Right.
He's just doing it because he knows it's wanted by other people.
Gives him power.
It gives him power, right?
Yeah.
And so if we look within us, like what are these things that we're hoarding within ourselves that actually don't really need to be there?
Oh, don't actually benefit us.
They don't benefit us, and but we are hoarding them because we think it gives us power over other people.
For sure.
And so we have,
man.
right?
That's
And so
layered.
it's like, okay, so if we think about what is the gold within me, and that's going to be something very different within each one of us, and then what's the virgins? You know, like I must confront those. I must slay the dragon, the ego, in order to free up those things that they're not serving me at all.
Yes. The idea of picking up your cross daily is a very Christian myth here. Were you about to say that too?
No, but
Okay,
it's,
okay.
it's along
Sometimes
the
we
lines
do
of
that,
where I was
Taylor.
going to go.
I know. So the Christian idea of picking up your cross daily is that this death and confrontation of the dragon does actually happen daily and consistently throughout your life. And so the gold that the dragon is hoarding from the hero or from the society, if you're looking at it from the internal landscape perspective, let's say that you want to be a musician. I know this journey very well. If you want to be a musician, you don't have any boss telling you what to do. You don't have any people telling you when you got to be where and what you got to accomplish. So it's a very independent lifestyle, which then means you're incredibly prone to procrastination and to putting things off and to maybe just, doing what you want to do. Maybe just smoking weed and diddling on your guitar a little bit, but you're not like figuring out how to really hone your craft, or you're not putting in the practice hours, or you're not networking or doing those quote unquote business things. So for the artist, for the musician in this case, the dragon is in you, the procrastinator in you. And it's so fierce and it's so conniving that it can convince you at the drop of a hat to not do what you really want to do, which is, put in the time to make yourself a better artist so you can succeed. So then the gold, after you slay this dragon of procrastination, is slowly received over time. In this case, you're slaying the dragon today, and you're putting in your time, you're building your craft, and then the gold accumulates over time. And so you end up, I just wanted to throw that out there, the idea that these dragons can be things like procrastination, and the gold is that life that we really want, that unless we're willing to slay that dragon, we'll never get that life.
So in The War of Art,
Love that book.
Stephen Pressfield, that's the
That's
author,
it,
right? Stephen Pressfield. He talks about how anything that is actually going to be beneficial for our growth, part of us is going to have resistance to.
Yeah.
And that's it. It's conquering that dragon, facing that resistance head on, because the reward on the other side is that expression of the creativity and the revealing of all of those gems that are buried inside that the resistance is keeping us from. The dragon is blocking us from.
Yes. Yes, it is.
It's like the confronting of the dragon. I'm thinking of so many storylines where it actually requires the hero to be willing to give up their own life.
Yes. The sacrifice.
It is. It's a sacrifice.
Wow.
It's a dying of, at the time, they're like, you know what? This is what needs to happen. It ends up that it was just the part of them that needed to be released and needed to go. But you see that in so many stories. I want to list all of these.
There's also
stories,
the Matrix has a beautiful example of this.
He does that.
He dies. He gets shot in the chest by Agent Smith.
Yes.
And then what happens?
He sacrifices by diving into the hologram of the
That's not yet.
assassin.
No.
I'm
is being
skipping ahead.
chased. He's being chased away from the agents, and he goes into room 303.
Yeah.
And then he gets shot in the chest by Agent Smith, and he dies.
Yeah.
He falls back on the wall behind him in the Matrix, and he dies. And then in the real world, Trinity comes to him and says, "You're not supposed to die because I love you." Yeah. And she kisses him on the lips, and then he comes back to life. Yeah. And this is incredibly Joseph Campbell hero's journey mythology right here.
When
The
he
saving
reopens
grace
his
of
eyes.
love.
Yeah.
It's the saving grace of love itself. The holy, most divine principle that we could imagine shows up in this part of the myth, where it literally shows that love can overcome the biggest thing that you're afraid of, which in most cases is the fear of death.
Yeah.
So then Neo comes back to life. This is my favorite moment of the Matrix.
Yes.
He comes back to life, and now the agents are down the hall.
Yeah.
And they turn and they look at him and they go, basically, WTF? Like, how is Neo alive? And they shoot him. And then what does Neo do? He literally says one word. He says no. He puts his hands out. He says no. And then the bullets stop in midair and he plucks them out. Like, wow, I can control this whole code. And then he sees all of the Matrix as a code. And then,
Through love.
then Agent Smith tries to get him again. And then he gets him in his place, and then he eventually jumps into Agent Smith's chest
Yeah.
and blows him up from the inside out of divine love, I guess. Unprogramming the Matrix because of the divine love.
Well, he was just software. He wasn't a
Right. Yeah, exactly. He's the face of that algorithm.
Yes, the literal face of the algorithm.
Yeah.
And what were you gonna?
I was just going to reiterate how much I love that Neo controls the entire Matrix with one word, and that's the word no. It's so powerful.
So powerful.
As a metaphor in today's landscape for the mind matrix that we're all being manipulated into, it just takes one word to control that entire matrix.
No.
And that individual word is no.
It was
And
also.
I'm sorry.
I just love how excited you
God,
are.
I get so excited. I don't want to hog the conversation, but this is my zone. But yeah.
Someone has entered the zone.
Love it.
Neo comes back to life because of the divine love. And he's willing to die. He
beautiful.
confronts death head on. He actually experiences death. He's
That's the
willing to let the dragon completely slay him.
Yes.
And then that gives him the ability to slay the dragon.
Well, and that happens in Harry Potter, which you weren't going to acknowledge earlier.
Yeah, I'm
Whatever.
sorry.
Harry actually allows himself to be killed by he who must not be named,
Voldemort.
Lord Voldemort.
Oh my God, she said it.
And he goes into this like blasted out white world that you're like, oh, is this in his mind? What's going on? And he sees this like cowardly, shriveled up, mutilated baby thing.
Oh, wow.
It's pretty graphic. And that is the evil. That was Voldemort. That's all there is to him. And when his eyes are open to the truth of what's going on and how much, pain has to embody the evil that's in the world and how it doesn't feel good to live that way. And his eyes are open to, you can choose love. And Harry was saved by that's why Voldemort couldn't kill him when he was a baby, because his mom stepped in and she sacrificed herself. So he had the mark of love on him.
Yeah.
And then I was also thinking of Hunger Games. We're just gonna say the ends of every popular fantasy science fiction story. Okay, so Hunger Games, Katniss has to go up against Peeta, her best friend, in the whole arena. And the way that they get out of it, she's supposed to kill him. And she's like, you know what? It's not worth it. If we both allow ourselves to die by eating these poison berries because we love each other, then they're not going to get their wish. And so it's the willingness to die to the thing is what allows you to overcome it. And then when you come back, you have the knowledge of, oh, that wasn't real anyway.
Of course. I guess the ultimate fear being symbolized over and over and over of every human being is the fear of death.
And conquering it.
Yeah.
Oh, death, where art thou sting?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the ultimate. Like
That's our ultimate
lesson
fear.
of life. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that is the actual dragon being symbolized is the fear of death. And this fear of death plays out in microcosm ways. We're afraid, you want to quit your job and start your dream career, but you're afraid of the death of the job that you know.
Yes.
And so there is this constant symbolic death and rebirth process.
Yes.
But even I think ultimately in the literal sense, we're all afraid that when we die, that'll be it. We'll somehow go back into this unknowing void of blackness that we supposedly came from. But the redemptive truth in the hero's journey is that there is divine love on the other side of this seeming death that resurrects the hero to be able to transcend that ultimate fear. It's amazing.
Well,
Let me check what time we're at.
Yeah.
I feel like we've been talking for a long time.
we should have a 5-minute exercise.
Did you prepare something, Kristen, or no? I don't want to put you on the spot. I'm sorry. No, it's all good.
Yeah, I've been preparing all week. No, I don't.
I'm wondering, if I have a second to look something up.
Yeah. Go for it.
Because I have John O'Donohue's Book of Blessings right here. And I'm pretty sure there's one about coming up to a threshold. If I just have a second to...
I also want to, while you're looking that up, let everybody know that Go onto YouTube and just search for Joseph Campbell and the Hero's Journey. So many people have made amazing videos that synthesize the hero's journey into an understandable bit of information within 10, 15 minutes of time. And I watched, there's a movie called Finding Joe.
Oh yeah, that's
And
great.
it's all about this Joseph Campbell's life, and then specifically his understanding and teaching of the hero's journey. I highly recommend that as another must-see type bit of media, is Finding Joe. It's an amazing documentary, basically, on his life and his influence. And but it's not just like about Joe. It's about what he's learned and what he's given to the world.
One of my favorite things to do when I'm like meeting with a new client is I'll say, we'll do these two exercises, but one of them is tell me, from childhood what your favorite book was. Or what are you currently reading? And, but there's something fascinating about that one book when you were a child that just captivated your imagination, your attention.
Yeah.
And then you were like, wow, you don't forget that book. For me, it was Number of the Stars. It was about Holocaust and, World War II. And, anyway, so storytelling for me with Joseph Campbell, like you talk about the myth, him talking about the myth and what that means. I wanted to say this quote really quick. He said, telling stories is a serious business with great responsibility attached. Don't forget that. Remember, you are teaching people about life, whether you know it or not, and whether they agree with your views or not.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think these stories, they impact us, even on a subconscious level.
Yeah.
And I think that is why we return to them so much. It's
Serious
why we're
business.
addicted to them, to be honest, because they reveal so much about our inner state. And I think we all have this void and hunger to know thyself. And most of us spend a lot of our hero's journey unconscious to that part of it. And so we seek it out naturally by watching movies and reading books, trying to get a glimpse, if even just for 90 minutes of what this all means.
Tolkien actually has a quote that I have up in my room, and it says, the job of a fantasy writer is to create a world in which you can take as many people with you to escape this reality.
That's cool.
Yeah. And there's a lot to unpack with that quote, but at the same time, I love that he was creating another world. And what his intention was doing was to take people out of this, air quotes, reality and throw them into a new world.
Yeah, the magic of that is that we lose a lot of prejudice that we have in this world
like
to
you
be
get
able
to
to talk
start
about a
over.
subject. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like that's why Avatar is so amazing, because if James Cameron made the exact same movie in the real world setting, people could get upset with certain political divisions or say this and that, or, you're a fearmonger, or you're a climate act, well, no, it's whatever. All of a sudden it's too literal.
Right.
And now we get caught up not talking about the meta story, the meta thing we're trying to talk about. So when you do put it in fantasy, it kind of bypasses this part of our brain. And as an artist, I'm fascinated with that idea that I can talk to you about something by taking you into a foreign land mentally, in imagination, and talking to you in a way that you will understand, and then it will translate into your life. And it also prevents me from even having political bias, because I'm not attempting in that situation. I would be attempting to talk to you about spiritual growth. And spiritual growth is universal. It's not divided politically. It's not dual.
Right.
So yeah, I think that setting up of those worlds is a wonderful tool.
So you
Found
have
a
something
thing.
with us?
What you got?
Okay.
So this book is amazing. It's John O'Donohue, who is a Celtic philosopher and teacher and poet. And this is called To Bless the Space Between Us, and it's his book of blessings.
Love it.
And there's one for everything in here. And this one is from, it's titled For a New Beginning. So it reminds me of right at the beginning of that call to adventure, what that sensation is like. And I would love to share this as a blessing for both of you and me, but also for anyone listening right now who feels like they're
they're getting a niggling of something. They're on the cusp of something. They're being asked to change something, and it's a little bit scary, but they're taking baby steps towards the threshold. I think that this blessing is for you. So
Love it. Give it to
All
us,
right.
Taylor.
go ahead, and if you want to, if you so desire, you can close your eyes, adjust yourself comfortably, feet on the ground. If you're driving, don't close your eyes. Take a deep breath. For a New Beginning by John O'Donohue. In out of the way places of the heart, where your thoughts never think to wander, this beginning has been quietly forming, waiting until you were ready to emerge. For a long time, it has watched your desire, feeling the emptiness growing inside you, noticing how you willed yourself on, still unable to leave what you had outgrown. It watched you play with the seduction of safety and the gray promises that sameness whispered, heard the waves of turmoil rise and relent, wondered, would you always live like this? Then the delight when your courage kindled and out you stepped onto new ground, your eyes young again with energy and dream, a path of plenitude opening before you. Though your destination is not yet clear, you can trust the promise of this opening. Unfurl yourself into the grace of beginning that is at one with your life's desire. Awaken your spirit to adventure. Hold nothing back. Learn to find ease in risk. Soon you will be home in a new rhythm, for your soul senses the world that awaits you.
Beautiful.
That was nice.
That's gorgeous.
That was perfect.
Yeah.
Lovely.
Definitely sets up the whole call.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, and I think we all feel that. I think I want to touch just one more brief moment on this call. I feel that what's going on in our world today, we are being called more than ever to raise our consciousness, to raise ourselves in a position of true compassion, empathy, and a willingness to look beyond the dualistic split that we're all stuck in very much. And if we embrace these calls, I think that is going to be the building of the new earth that we all desperately desire. And I think the only way out from where we're currently at is if more and more people take this call that will ultimately lead to the confronting of their largest fear. And when they slay that largest fear, they will be a new warrior for love on this planet. And that is what we genuinely need. So all of the people out there that may be listening to us and feeling something throughout this whole message, that feeling is there for a reason. And it's not because we've said the right words. It's because spirit is stirring in you. This is the idea of being chosen. It doesn't come from your ego. It comes from the divine source to you. And it calls you. It invites you to this next level of being. So embrace it. Trust the process. Know that you will have synchronistic guides and gifts given to you with every trial you go through that will help you defeat this dragon. And then when you come back to the quote unquote ordinary world, you will meet all of the other radical warriors of love that exist in this world. And that's how we're all going to elevate outside of the craziness that is 2020.
Yeah.
If we do this inner work.
Amen,
Yes.
brother.
Woo!
Yes.
Amen.
Woo!
Felt it.
Feel
Joy
it.
to the world.
Hey, telling you, got me in my zone.
We did. Well, I want to enter a zone like that one day.
It was good.
That was good. That was so good.
So if you're into this, thank you for joining us right now. And if you want more info, if you're watching the YouTube right now, our info is scrolling. You can check out our Instagram. It's The Remembering Podcast.
If you have any thoughts or feedback or questions that we can open up or take a shot at or elaborate on anything, send us an email. It's what is it?
Email is the rememberingpodcast at gmail.com.
Yeah.
Someone email us.
Please. Please.
Yeah, we just
Bueller.
yeah.
No, but we would love to answer questions, or it may even inspire a whole new podcast episode.
Oh, that
depending
would be
on
fabulous.
How cool it is.
Yeah.
And then the only other social media is Twitter, which is remembering 1111.
Yep.
Yes.
Sweet.
Great.
Awesome, guys. Well,
Yeah. Thanks for coming along
was
the
fun.
journey. Yep. We'll see you in about 2 weeks, I guess.
Yeah.
Any last words?
no, I just love the hero's journey.
It's so good.
We might have to do a part 2.
We should.
Because we left out so many other steps in between
know.
the 4. There's like 12 total that
Yeah.
you can go down.
Yeah.
Oh, I just love it.
Maybe we'll have a whole Joseph Campbell episode. Just
Pete
talk about his
Holmes,
quotes and stuff.
In Pete Holmes's book, Comedy Sex God, he keeps calling Joseph Campbell Joey Cams.
I love
Of course
it.
he does.
I love it.
Joey Cams.
And he calls
Joey
Ram
Cam.
Das Rami D.
Perfect. Perfect.
Joey Cams. All right. Thanks, y'all.
Thanks for
Great.
watching. We'll see you in about 2 weeks. And until then,
Bye.
Bye.